So following that in-depth look into the why, the context of when a journey of transformation changes, cravings management, and this idea of gradual change and how change happens slowly, I want to peer today into this idea or this notion of limiting beliefs. This idea that when you're trying to change something within you, that you're going to encounter not just things that are just wrong and, oh, simple, this is some dead weight, we can just remove it. No, it's not so simple as that. You're going to encounter things that have a place, or that at least feel like they have a place in your life. They have a reason to be. And they are limiting beliefs now because you are somebody different, or at least in the process of becoming somebody different, which starts from the why that we established. When I said, I want to be free of using food as a medicine or as a drug outside of nutrition, and I started to act based on that why, I started to bump into lots of old, outdated ways of thinking about what's food's role in my life. These are limiting beliefs. Part of the process with my coach was looking at each of those, at least the main ones, but we did actually look at pretty much all of them and seeing what constitutes a limiting belief and in what areas in my life it exists. I'll mention a few, and I'll also kind of share what I see is the structure of a limiting belief. I think a limiting belief is something that came in handy. It is a solution to a situation, a trigger, a stimulus that came in handy at one point. It was either one of helping you and me navigate away from a negative experience or navigate towards a positive experience. I think the order at which this limiting belief situation happens is best captured by something I was thinking about earlier today. If you think about an ostrich, it buries its head in the sand, in the ground, to hide from predators. I don't know if that actually works in nature. It must if it's evolved to do that somehow. But if I think about it in like a cartoon and I see the predator, let's say a wolf coming up to an ostrich, I don't even know what the ostrich's predator really is, but it's a cartoon, right? So we can bend the rules a bit. And I see a wolf, right, coming up to this ostrich with its head in the sand. I think this ostrich is completely dead. So for me, this was the ways, I think, a bunch of my limiting beliefs, but at least the ones I'm going to mention today, it's the way they operated. And I call it the ostrich's delusion. The ostrich's delusion for one of the limiting beliefs, for example, is I believed I needed sips of alcohol to be slightly more comfortable in social situations. I feel a slight discomfort, and I noticed, oh, maybe I'm having a few more sips to kind of manage that discomfort. And maybe a few minutes later, that discomfort's gone. And in the back of my mind, there's this link, this ostrich's delusion that when I stick my head in this sand, it feels nice and warm. And whatever's outside can't hurt me. But actually, right outside, there's a wolf. And that wolf is, on one side, I'm becoming more dependent on this idea, which just started from, hey, few sips make me feel a bit more comfortable. It seems kind of innocuous if you think about it, but it really isn't. I'm becoming more dependent on that. That in itself is a wolf all on its own. And then on the other side, there's the effects of like the hangover of the next day. That's another wolf as well. Not only is my body probably burning less calories just at a resting state because it's trying to take out all of this alcohol, on a Sunday morning, but also because I'm having negative emotions, I'm craving some eggs and some cheese and some oil and some sweets and maybe more than once a day, just to feel a little bit better, just to feel like I'm halfway to being human again. And so what started off as a few sips to feel a little bit more comfortable, seemingly innocuous, became ostrich head in the sand. Wolf is just going to devour my entire body and leave my head. That's kind of a grim image. Apologies for that. But really just that the threat, the cost is absolutely there. So this chapter of limiting beliefs, the work that I did with my coach, it was noticing that, okay, yes, this thing has or had a utility. It had a function in my life. But when you bring in this new why, this new goal, and it starts to, by its nature, unveil these limiting beliefs, these ostrich delusions, you realize that the cost of this outdated solution has become public enemy number one to your why, to the goal that you have, and that it can be so sneaky. Few sips equals thousands of calories, or turns into, let's say, thousands of calories. I had a similar thing with, just to kind of step outside of the realm of alcohol, with this limiting belief of food is an important reward to life, to life's stresses, to life's negative emotions, and I noticed in a similar metric, I'll use bites instead of sips. I noticed that the more I was overwhelmed with, this project is slightly more difficult than the one before, there's slightly more responsibility, I'm juggling more tasks this week than I was last week, the more life brought on difficulties, the more bites I would take, the more fast food I would order. And so this limiting belief of, I feel that because I have these challenges, I deserve to be rewarded with things that are yummy and things that basically, in another way of looking at it, things that allow me to throw a lot of positive emotions at the negative emotions I'm feeling from just day-to-day operations of normal being a human, just throwing tons and tons of positive emotions via food at these negative emotions. It is an outdated solution. It worked. It did help. But when you introduce this new why of, I don't want to be a slave to food, you see, I'm doing this a lot. I'm sticking my head in the sand of, this food is yummy and comfortable and so good, but right outside that sand is this mountain of calories that's building and building and building, has nothing to do with nutrition. It's just for negative emotion sedation. And so the focus of the work, when we identified all of these limiting beliefs, became, hey, let's delete, let's kill, let's erase the ostrich delusion. Let us introduce new solutions to problems that these limiting beliefs hover around. With the social environment thing, it was about, for example, being willing to be uncomfortable in that space, to feel, I'm quite sensitive, as in I get a lot of little inputs in my body in social situations, and I'm attuned to them. So it's just to be willing to feel these little spikes in negative emotions and notice that, there's the tug, there's the pull in me to reach for the glass and have sips, and start to, first of all, just reward yourself for noticing that this is a great observation. Then perhaps try to have a little fewer sips, little less sips, and allow for basically this discomfort to increase slowly and be more comfortable with discomfort, and to discover that there is a you in that discomfort. There is a you outside of this limiting belief. Similar thing to food as being a reward to life's stresses. This idea that I cannot, almost it became that. They transform. They don't just stay as solid ideas. This idea of food, should be a reward. It's a nice thing to eat after a heavy day, a heavy head. It relieves the heaviness. It became, I can't cope with life. It transformed, mutated. I can't cope with life without this burger as a kind of anchoring me back to just baseline, as a rebalancing of negative and positive emotions. And so then it's, okay, how can I start to wade or float into the discomfort of, if I want to pursue my why, I've got to start to face and be with the discomfort of this negative emotion. I'm not going to handle it with food. I'm going to handle it another way. Sometimes it's just sitting with it and letting it pass. It is such an important baseline, for example, to have. And noticing that these things, for example, this heavy head does lift. It does lift when you give it time, when you don't rush to use a salve on it to our body is a fighter. It can heal on its own. And that makes us stronger. So, for example, just allowing it to pass made me stronger. If it was a less strong emotion, if it was a bigger emotion, maybe I did need to eat something, but less intense and less calorific, and then slowly wean off of that. But I hope I was able to kind of carry across this idea of limiting beliefs, of them being outdated solutions to ostrich delusions. So, it's a solution to something, but it really is also creating a bigger problem. There's a wolf outside. And I hope it was clear that identifying the why that we talked about last time helps a lot in pinpointing these ostrich delusions. And I hope I was able to capture some instances of how to kind of wade into the discomfort and start to remove your head from the sand.